Your name, please?
Lady Macbeth.
Your occupation?
I was a queen.
Your name?
Faustus, Dr. John Faustus.
Occupation?
My dear boy, I was a genius.
Your name, sir?
Oh, you don't want to know about me. I don't belong in this exalted company. I wasn't anybody you'd know, just a salesman, the New England territory.
Insight. The religious principles underlying American democracy. The fundamental connection between faith and freedom.
How do you do? My name's Father Kieser. Today we're going to discuss an organization to which you belong. I'm a member, so is our director and our producer, our cameraman and technicians. You don't need a credit card or a character reference to get in. In fact, to be a member of this club, there's only one requirement. During the course of your entire life, you must have committed at least one sin. Now, I know sin isn't a very popular concept in the 20th century. Some people get very upset by the mere mention of the word. They like to think of sin as a medieval, outmoded, archaic concept. Something that's hardly acceptable to sophisticated moderns. For these people, morality is completely subjective. It's a question of the way your glands function, the way you were brought up, what kind of education you had, what kind of parents you had. For these people, there's nothing objective about it. No universal guiding all men, no free will for that matter. I think you're familiar with this kind of thinking. Perhaps you've used it yourself to justify your actions. I think we've all been tempted to rationalize. But today, I want you to be honest with yourself. Your glands, your education, and your economic status, all these contribute to your decisions. But only you do. Your actions are your own because they flow from your own free will. If those actions are degrading, if they're sinful, they are sinful only because you deliberately and knowingly decided to make them so. Today, to help you better understand yourself and the consequences of your own actions, I've invited into our studio 3 of the most prominent members of this organization of sinners. They're with us today, and they have promised to give you an intimate, frank story of their sins.
You say you were a salesman?
That's right. I worked the New England states. Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, as far north as Augusta, Maine. But my office was in New York. That's where I made my home, hung the old fedora.
Had you a family?
Oh, yes. Had a wife and 2 fine boys, great kids.
Must have been very proud of them.
You bet I was. I trained them. Well, that is, I tried to train them to get ahead in the world and make a success of themselves.
That's what you live for. Success, I mean.
Sure, you bet. Success is the thing. Something you can get a grip on. Be somebody. You know, when I walked into an office, everybody turned around and gave me the big hello. I was whisked right into the buyer's office. I never had to wait.
How do you explain your success as a salesman?
What's my secret?
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could say the old personality, confidence. I could always make a good impression, you know, the right story for the right occasion. And contacts. Let me tell you, it's not what you can do, but who you know that counts.
You tried to be popular then?
Well, I didn't have to try. It was easy for me. Everybody knew me. Everybody liked me. Let me tell you something. I used to get Christmas cards from all over the world. Think of that. All over the world.
You must have been very impressive. How'd you affect women?
Well, my wife idolized me.
Was she the only woman in your life?
Not exactly.
What do you mean?
Well, women found me very attractive.
You mean...
Yes, I had this girl in New Haven. You know how it is when you're on the road. You get lonely, terribly.
Is that why you did it?
No, not really.
What then?
I was bored.
Bored with your wife?
No, I was bored with life.
Why should you have been bored?
Because my life had no meaning. It was empty.
Empty? But you were well liked. Your wife loved you. You had 2 fine sons. Wasn't that enough for you?
No, it wasn't. I needed more than that. I was always looking ahead to the future, waiting for something to happen. You know, the big break. But never happened the way I wanted it to.
Did this girl up in New Haven give you what you wanted? I mean, did she give you the satisfaction and the happiness you wanted?
No, she didn't. Well, she made me forget my emptiness for a couple of hours, but that was all. She even made matters worse.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I really couldn't face myself after I spent a night with her. I couldn't face my family.
You felt guilt?
Well, I guess you'd call it that. Yes, I guess I felt guilt.
This interfered with your family life?
Well, look, if you can't live with yourself, how can you live with others?
You stopped loving your family?
No. I loved them all right. Nobody I loved more than my sons, but I just didn't see how they could love me. I mean, if they knew what I was inside, they'd despise me.
Did they find out?
Joe did. It was the end of his senior year in high school. Everything looked very promising. Everybody knew Joe. Everybody liked him, just like his old dad. He was a football star. He had a full scholarship to the University of Minnesota.
What happened?
Well, he made an unexpected trip to New Haven. Found this girl in my hotel room. He didn't say anything. He sat there on his suitcase and he cried. That great big guy, he just sat there and cried. Well, nothing was the same after that.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, Joe sort of died inside. He wouldn't go to college. He wouldn't get a job. He wouldn't do anything after that.
Did he hate you?
No, I don't think he hated me, but he did lose all respect for me, and I guess maybe that's even worse. I'd been his ideal. Now he saw that his ideal was phony. It was, well, just more than he could take. He just gave up. Never really took hold after that. Began to steal, carouse, waste his life away.
How long did that last?
Oh, I don't know. I guess it's still going on. Neither of my boys ever took hold. Never amounted to anything.
I thought you said they were great successes.
Yeah, well, I was lying. My whole life's been a lie. I was always playing a part, trying to be the big shot I never was. Look, my boys aren't stupid. They knew what their father was. That's what hurt most of all. I knew that they knew.
What did this do to your wife?
It crucified her. She told the boys to get out, but that wasn't the trouble. I was. I was the problem. I failed my boys. I let them down. I wanted them to be everything I wasn't. Fine, strong, moral, but I just couldn't show them the way. It only made matters worse. So I decided to get out. I killed myself.
You killed yourself?
Yeah, I killed myself.
Is that the way it ended?
That's how it ended.
In The Salesman, we catch a glimpse of the real nature of sin. There's nothing strong or noble or admirable about it. In fact, over the long haul, there's nothing even exciting about sin. Sin is weakness, it's emptiness. Sin repeated again and again leads to sheer boredom. The salesman was a pitiful creature, and it was sin that made him so. Also in The Salesman, we see the social repercussions of sin. Sin degrades the human personality. It deprives a man of his dignity. It makes him less lovable. And it incapacitates him for rich, full social living. It deprives him of the respect of his fellows. Tension, conflict, even hatred are the result. For many years, the salesman had the respect of his sons. But once they found out the truth about their dad, their happiness and his evaporated. They could no longer live at peace with one another. Sin puts a man at war with other men. This is the first great effect of sin. Let's turn now to our second guest.
Your name is Lady Macbeth?
It is.
Your husband was Lord Macbeth.
That is correct.
Do you mind if I ask a personal question?
That all depends on the question.
Were you happy with Macbeth?
The first years of our marriage were very happy ones. Macbeth loved me. He was a strong, brave man. Yes, we were very happy together. Until our sin.
Your sin? What sin was that?
My sin was ambition. I was not content to be the wife of a nobleman. I wanted to be the wife of the king. To be respected and feared by everyone.
Is that a sin? The desire to be queen, I mean?
Not to be queen, perhaps. It was the means that was sinful.
What do you mean?
I mean, I wanted to be queen so badly I was ready to do anything to get it.
What did you do?
I murdered the king.
You murdered the king.
My husband did it, but I put him up to it. I made him do it. And I made that murder a test of his love for me.
But how could you do such a thing?
It wasn't easily done. The king was a kind and gentle man. And in the beginning, my nature was compassionate. I had to screw my courage to the sticking point and do violence to my own nature.
Violence to your own nature?
Yes. Oh, sin is unnatural. Particularly our sin. Murder. I had to thicken my blood, inject gall into my veins, and steel myself for the job ahead. I permitted not one trace of remorse or compassion to enter my heart.
Were you successful?
That depends on what you mean by successful. We did succeed in murdering Duncan. And my husband did become king.
I suppose you were very happy after that. Your life must have been very full.
That's what we thought. But it didn't work out that way.
What do you mean?
I mean that sin always promises much more than it delivers. And besides, you're never done with it. One sin leads to another. We had to lie to cover our real motives, and we had to continue to kill to protect ourselves.
Who were you afraid of?
We were afraid of ourselves. In murdering Duncan, we had not only broken the law of God, we had broken the law of our own natures. We had debased and cursed ourselves. Everything changed. Neither of us were ever the same again.
How do you mean?
Macbeth, my husband, was plagued with guilt. He couldn't sleep. He was haunted by the memory of what he had done. At first, he put his guilt into words, but I suppressed mine.
Were you able to forget your sin?
A sin like mine can never be forgotten until it is forgiven. And I wouldn't ask for forgiveness. I tried to drive its memory from my mind. But it was no use. My mind was affected, and I began to talk and walk in my sleep. And I was plagued by the blood on my hands. I couldn't wipe it off.
But you did get over it, didn't you?
No. No one could help me. Only God, and I refused to turn to him.
How then did it end?
Our lives lost all meaning and purpose. Human existence seemed nothing but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. Is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury and signifying nothing.
You mean you despaired?
I did. There was no reason to go on living.
Had you to do it again, would you commit the crime?
I would not. Sin is sheer stupidity. It poisoned my life.
Lady Macbeth succumbed to human nature's oldest and most persistent illusion. She thought that she'd be perfectly happy once she was queen. She was terribly mistaken. She still had to live with herself and with the memory of her sin, and that was more than she could bear. There's always a certain amount of self-delusion, self-deception in sin. We say to ourselves, that looks good. It'll solve all my problems. I'll just try it. It's only after we've taken the bait that we realize that there's a hook present. Sin always promises more than it delivers. Human nature is built in such a way that definite laws of conduct have been written right into that nature. These laws are not dependent upon your education or your glands. They're not dependent upon other people. Right is right, you know, if nobody's right. And wrong is wrong if everybody's wrong. The moral law is natural because it's rooted in human nature and can be discovered very easily by human reason. It cannot be broken without eliciting from nature a kind of protest. If you eat too much, you get a stomachache. That's nature's way of saying, be more careful. If you drink too much, you get a hangover. That's nature's way of saying, watch out. And if you violate your nature by sinning, you will find that your nature will rebel. It will protest. It will cry out, I am too good to be treated like this. That protest is what we usually call guilt. To experience guilt after deliberately committing a sin is natural and healthy. It's nature's way of warning you. Not to experience guilt after the commission of a sin is the sign of a pathological personality. When you commit a sin, you will find that your nature takes a kind of vengeance on you. You lose your peace of mind. Interior conflict is the result. You lose respect for yourself. Somewhere in Scripture it says the sinner hates his own soul. This is so true. There's something masochistic about sin. It's a type of spiritual suicide. Sin puts a man at war with himself. Because when you sin, you not only hurt other people, you hurt God. But most of all, you hurt yourself. And that's why sin is so silly. Let's turn now to our third guest.
Your name, sir?
Faustus, John Faustus.
Your occupation?
Well, I've had many occupations. I've been a philosopher, a medical doctor, a lawyer, teacher of theology. If you must list one, put down genius. I was a genius.
Your life must have been a very full one. I would think you would have enjoyed great satisfaction.
Not. These things did not satisfy me. I was still limited. I was still bound down. There was so much I didn't know, so much that I couldn't do.
I don't understand.
No, you couldn't, you poor fool. I was tired of being a mere man. I wanted to be a god.
Well, weren't you asking too much? You were a man. How could you be more than a man?
Well, I made a deal.
With whom?
With the devil.
With the devil?
With the devil.
But nobody believes in the devil anymore.
Idiot, that's his greatest strategy. Those who reject his existence are those most prone to his attacks.
What were the terms of the deal?
Well, I promised the devil my soul if he would give me 24 years of pleasure. Mephistopheles was to be my servant. He was to give me whatever I asked for and to tell me whatever I desired to know.
Did Mephistopheles seduce you into signing?
How dare you think that? I told you I was a genius. I signed of my own free will.
But surely you didn't know what you were doing.
I did. I made the deal with my eyes wide open. I'm fully responsible for it.
But how could you, a brilliant man, trade 24 years of pleasure and power for an eternity of frustration? Had you rejected the existence of hell?
I had not. I may have lost my faith, but I never lost my reason.
Well, why then did you do it?
Well, I told you I was tired of being a man. I wanted to make a god of myself. I wanted divine powers. I was determined to live only for myself, to worship at the shrine of my own ego.
Did you not fear God?
Well, I did, but it was not his justice that bothered me most. It was his love.
What do you mean?
I mean that God had not rejected me. Even after I signed the contract, God continued to love me. He invited me to repent.
Did you?
No, I considered it. But I procrastinated. I put it off, and then Mephistopheles would reappear and distract me. He was a very clever devil. I never repented. I was haunted by the memory of God's love until the very end.
Tell me how it ended.
Well, the devil was faithful to his promise. For 24 years he gave me everything I wanted. I had unlimited power. He answered all my questions. Well, he answered all but one.
What could he answer?
I asked him once, who made the world? And he refused to answer. He would not allow me to think of God. He was afraid that the mere thought of Christ would melt my heart.
Did you ever think of Christ?
I did, but Mephistopheles was always there to tell me it was no use. I was damned. God was not strong enough, not loving enough to forgive my sin. That's what he kept telling me. And like the damned fool that I was, I believed him.
You say you are damned. Are you in hell, then?
Yes. That's where it ended. I am in hell.
What is it like in hell?
It is too horrible for words. Hell is thirst without drink. It's hunger without food. It's desire without possible satisfaction. Like all human beings, I've been made in such a way that every fiber in my being cries out for God. I need him. And yet in hell, this need can never be satisfied because God is not here. He never will be here. The essence of hell is the absence of God. And this is why I suffer the worst kind of frustration.
But how could a God of love do this to you?
But God didn't do this. I did. He wanted it otherwise, but I insisted that I have my way.
Well, yours is indeed a unique story, Dr. Faustus. And I'm sure our television audience will be most interested in it.
I've no doubt that they will be very much interested in it. My experience is not unique.
It's not unique? What do you mean?
I mean that every individual who commits a serious sin makes essentially the same choice that I did. You see, pride is at the root of every sin. Just analyze, if you will, greed and lust and envy, and you'll find that they all of them spring from pride. Most persons, of course, don't look at it that way.
You mean that pride is at the root of every sin?
Yes, I do.
I've never looked at it that way.
No, of course not, but all sins produce the same results as mine. They drive love out of one's life. They exclude God.
But do they end in the same way?
Yes, they can. Because that all depends upon the individual. It's never too late to be reconciled with God. You may have rejected him, but he's not rejected you. For me, it is too late. For you, it may not be.
The case of Dr. Faustus is, of course, classic. It exemplifies the true nature of sin. It shows the sinner rejecting God and refusing to live according to God's law. But sin is more than a violation of a law. Basically, sin is a refusal to love. Every time you sin, you say to God, Lord, you may love me, but I don't love you. Lord, you may want to make me happy, but I don't want to be happy in your way. I'll make myself happy. I'm going to live for myself. I'm going to make myself the center of the world. The sinner lives for himself, and he excludes God from his life. He exalts himself into a god. He begins to worship his own ego and have all else revolve about that ego. This puts the sinner at war with God. This is the worst of all the effects of sin. What are we going to do about sin then? I think there's two things we can do. First of all, for the sins of the past, there's only one remedy. This is the frank confession of them. Admit your guilt, assume your responsibility, and apologize to God for what you've done. Secondly, you can so plan your life as to do everything in your power to avoid all future sins. You are not really sorry for the past until you are ready to reform the future. And most of all, live your life according to your nature, the kind of life God wants you to live. That means a life of love. Love for God, love for other people, for God's sake. God, you know, is love. He loves you. He wants you to accept his love, and he wants you to return it. Love is the center, the core, the heart of the moral law. It's the remedy for sin. It's the fulfillment of your life.
Insight is a production of the Paulist Fathers, a group of Catholic priests who serve their nation as witnesses to the religious truth which underlies American freedom.